In the year 2391, Earth had long since become part of the United Planetary Assembly, a loose confederation of over 70 species spanning 5 galaxies. Technological marvels were shared, cultures exchanged, and even space tourism flourished. But integration had its limits. When the Federans, a bioluminescent species from the edge of the Eridani cluster, made a desperate plea for help, the galaxy hesitated. A rare genetic disorder was wiping them out, and their only hope lay in a compatible blood source. After centuries of data cross-referencing, it turned out that only humans carried a protein that could stabilize the Federan circulatory system. Galactic leaders sent out a call. Volunteers needed to donate blood to save a species. No one came. Whether it was latent speciesism, fear of unknown medical risks, or the sheer inconvenience of giving blood for aliens, not a single human signed up. Social media was ablaze with outrage, arguments, and apathy. Except for one man. Julian Arrow was not famous, brilliant, or rich. He worked as a mechanic aboard the Artemis Ring, an orbital shipyard above Neptune. A quiet man in his late 30s, he lived alone, rarely spoke more than a few sentences at a time, and had no visible stake in galactic affairs. But when Julian saw the Federans' transmission, their tendrils dimming, their young gasping in gelatinous nurseries, something moved him. Maybe it was the quiet dignity of their suffering. Maybe it was the loneliness he recognized in their eyes. Or maybe he was just tired of humanity always looking away. He signed up. The process wasn't easy. Julian was flown to the Ceres Medical Nexus, where human and Federan scientists had established a joint facility. The blood compatibility wasn't perfect. It required intense filtering, protein restructuring, and daily infusions. The Federans' blood wasn't just different in color or consistency. It shimmered, pulsed with tiny currents of bioluminescence, and had entirely different immunological responses. Julian endured. Day after day, he submitted to the extraction process. It left him dizzy, weak, and on more than one occasion, he blacked out. But the results were undeniable. Federan infants who had been slipping away began to stabilize. Adults who had been confined to hydrostasis tanks began to walk again. One by one, the dying began to live. Word spread slowly at first. A few scientific journals picked up the story. Then a documentary crew from Mars came. Then came the viral clips. Julian surrounded by glowing Federan children, their tendrils curled lovingly around his arms. Humanity was fascinated and embarrassed. Here was proof that one man, without agenda or acclaim, had done what governments, corporations, and activists had not. Requests to donate began flooding in. By the end of the year, over 1 million humans had registered for blood compatibility tests. Medical facilities had to be expanded across the solar system to accommodate the new wave of donors. The Federans, once on the verge of extinction, began to thrive. Julian didn't return to the Artemis Ring. He remained on Ceres, not for recognition, but because the Federans had asked him to stay. He became something of a bridge, not just medically but culturally. He learned their language, which was based not on sound but on bioluminescent pulses. In time, he could communicate fluidly, flickering back at them in gentle bursts of light. The galaxy noticed. What had begun as a medical miracle became a diplomatic phenomenon. Other species who had previously kept their distance from humanity began re-evaluating old prejudices. If one human could do this, perhaps Earth was ready for deeper integration. Julian was invited to speak before the United Planetary Assembly. He refused, but the assembly came to him instead. Delegates from across the stars arrived at Ceres to meet the man who had changed everything. Trade deals were signed. Research partnerships bloomed. And somewhere along the way, someone coined a phrase that would be etched in history. The Man Who Bled for the Stars. Ending. Years passed. Julian remained on Ceres, now home to both humans and Fedrins. Children of both species grew up together, attended the same schools, and learned to speak in light as easily as in sound. The bond that had begun in blood had become something greater. Julian aged. The donation treatments had taken a toll on his body. Though medicine had advanced to extend human life well past 120 years, Julian felt older than his age. The Fedrins, whose lifespan was naturally shorter, had long since considered him one of their own. On the 20th anniversary of the first donation, a ceremony was held. A massive spire of crystal and alloy was erected on Ceres. It pulsed with light, a living monument encoded with the story of the Fedrin revival. At its base, a single inscription: one human, one choice, infinite ripples. Julian attended the ceremony, weak but smiling. As he looked out over the crowd, Fedrins glowing softly, humans waving banners, delegates from worlds he could barely pronounce, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. He passed away quietly 2 years later, in his sleep, surrounded by Fedrins who considered him a father, a brother, a friend. But Julian Arrow was not forgotten. In time, the United Planetary Assembly established the Arrow Protocol, a set of ethical and medical guidelines for cross-species aid and solidarity. Schools across the galaxies studied his life. Statues of him stood not just on Earth and Ceres, but on dozens of worlds. And every year, on the anniversary of his first donation, thousands of beings from countless species gather to give blood, not just to save lives, but to remember a simple mechanic who looked into the eyes of a dying species and chose not to look away. He didn't have superpowers. He didn't lead armies. He didn't conquer worlds. He just gave. And in doing so, he changed the galaxy.